Guys, and welcome to a new episode of A Dog's Soul. I'm Anita, I'm your host and a professional dog trainer, and today we're gonna talk about why the recall is sometimes so hard. So stay tuned and have fun. Alright, so before we start, I want to thank you for subscribing to the channel, for clicking the thumbs up, and of course for sharing every episode you like with your dog mom friends so that more people can have a benefit from this podcast. It really means a lot to me, and I'm so glad I could help a lot of dog moms with just these little tips and tricks and insights into your dog's feelings. So thanks for that, and now let's start with our podcast episode and with a little bit about recall and why it's so hard for our dogs. So you may have noticed that the recall is something that sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. While as a sit or a stay or a down is sometimes a lot easier and a lot more reliable than a recall. But why is that? It's not really different when we talk about training and techniques and how to build up the cue, but it still is a lot more difficult for our dogs to come back when called. And that actually has a reason, a very simple one. So imagine you're doing something and you're having fun, or you're at least very interested in what you're doing, and then somebody calls you and asks you to do something else. Something maybe not as interesting, like bringing out the trash, or loading the dishwasher, or washing the car, or something like that, or go grocery shopping. And it will be very hard to pull away from the thing you wanted to do something you really have to do, but you really don't want. And the same thing goes for our dogs and the recall. They are doing something they want to do, and we are calling them away from that. And maybe you have noticed that sometimes it's a lot easier to call your dog if he's just sniffing a little bit around and watching the environment and stuff like that. But it's very hard to call your dog away from another dog or away from a molehill he's digging into or away from a trash can that has been turned over. So the more interesting the thing is your dog is doing at the moment, the harder it is to call him away from that. And you see, the recall is always an interruption of your dog's behavior. And everything your dog's doing is a behavior. It doesn't matter if it looks spectacular or not. So even sniffing around in the environment or looking at a bird or even sleeping, this is all behavior. And it's all useful for your dog. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. And whenever you call him away, you interrupt whatever your dog's doing and ask him to do something different. And that's why it's so hard for our dogs to listen to us when we call them. And that's why it's so important to reward every single time. And in best cases, reward differently. So sometimes you do a little game, sometimes you do a little treat party, sometimes you do something together, like running or watching stuff or something like that. So your dog expects something amazing when he comes back. So it is not so hard for him to leave whatever he was doing. And that's why it's not enough to just give a treat from your hand. And another reason why it's so hard for our dogs to come back sometimes is because we are acting very impolite when we call our dogs. We tend to slump forward and bend down so we are above our dogs, and we're confronting them face on. So our body language tells our dog, you're in trouble, stay away. But our cue tells our dogs, come back to me. So it's difficult for our dogs to understand that the body language is not as important as the cue. While for dogs who communicate mostly through body language and facial expressions, this is very, very, very illogical. So what you can do to make it easier, besides rewarding really great, is to watch your body language. Turn a little sideways and bend your knees, so lower down, and do something inviting. And of course, yes, you can train your dog to know that when humans act impolite, it's not dangerous. But still, the more inviting you are, the easier it is for your dog to come back to you. And of course, very important, do not let your dog off leash if the recall isn't really, really well trained. We cannot reach 100%. That's not possible because it's a dog, it's a live animal. And of course, there will be times when the dog says, well, this is more important. This is more interesting. But the better you train your recall and the more distractions you build into the training, the less likely it is for your dog to just go after something else. And for training, of course, you'll start in an environment that's very distraction-free. So either inside the house or in your backyard or just in front of your house. And if this is an open area with no fences, then of course you can use a long line attached to a harness, never to a collar. This is very dangerous, so always a harness. And if you have a new puppy at home, of course the training is a lot easier because you are the safe haven of your puppy, and it is easier to get a puppy to respond to a recall very, very fast. And the more intense you build up your recall with a puppy, the more stable it will be when your puppy grows up and becomes an adolescent, where the brain is a little bit, well, let's say off. So there are a lot more interesting things than you at the moment, and the more party your dog is connecting with a recall, the easier it will sustain puberty. So that's something for you as a puppy owner to keep in mind. And of course, if you want to know more about puppies and how to socialize well and what you should keep in mind when you're selecting your puppy and a lot more great puppy stuff, come to the webinar on May 1st. The link is in the description, and of course, the webinar is free, so there's really no reason to stay away. And of course, if you have any questions, let me know. You can write me an email. I'll be sure to respond and help you however I can. And of course, if you want to work with me in person, you can go to Brave Dog Training Online and book your free call so that we can have a little chat and see how I can help you. I wish you an amazing time with your puppy and, of course, with your adult dog. And we'll see each other on May 1st. Until then, bye!